My beautiful wife and I recently had a baby boy, and during her pregnancy she suffered from acne. She has always had great skin, so it was totally new to her, and it was devastating to her self-esteem. She was given some prescription cream from her dermatologist, and it worked for a little while. Then it stopped working. I know this might not be a big deal to some people, but she's very insecure about her looks. I don't know why, and she felt terrible. Well, I recently found out that my sisters, teens, were switching her prescription cream with regular moisturizer. I've never been so angry with them in my life. I exploded. My mom had them apologize and told them they needed to pay for all the cream they threw away. They're so spoiled that their response was, okay, and then sticking their hand out to our mom. She said she wasn't paying and they needed to figure it out. My mom was serious. They needed to pay, but she also didn't seem okay with them getting jobs. She has this attitude that she's worked too hard for her daughters to have some crappy job at the mall. I guess she was expecting them to sell something or maybe babysit. Well, they recently came up with the money. I took it, of course, but I'm still not ready to move on with them. However, as they were leaving, I heard this exchange. My mom asked where they got it, and they both looked at her fiance and burst out laughing. My mom looked at him and he was like, well, you just said you wouldn't give it to them. You never said I couldn't. I saw red. I confronted him immediately and he told me what he did with his money wasn't my business. I said that while technically that's true, I would never look at him the same way again. I don't want him in my house and I'm not going to their wedding. Now my mom is calling me ridiculous and saying that they're a package deal, so don't expect her to come around either. Because I know what a big deal a wedding is, I feel slightly bad for refusing to allow my mom's fiancé in our home and boycotting their wedding. Edit, my sisters were very angry our mom was letting us stay at the house because they hate my wife and they felt our mom was being too nice. Not the idiot for choosing your wife over a bunch of selfish idiots. If they're behaving like this now, they will behave like this in the future. If your mom wants to come down on the wrong side of this, that is up to her. She can come or not. Don't let them blackmail you into folding on this issue. If there's time, you could try to see some family counselling to deal with this issue. However, it sounds like they won't be interested in doing the right thing. Otherwise, stand your ground. Your sisters messed with pregnant woman's health, emotional and mental state, and your mom only had to say they needed to pay back the money but wouldn't allow them to get jobs. What your sisters did was unbelievably cruel to your wife, and your mother's fiancé enabled them to escape responsibility for it. Seriously, what is wrong with all four of them? Maybe swap out their wedding cake for polystyrene. Yeah, your sisters learned absolutely nothing. They'd switch the Aquaphor with contractor glue or put itching powder in the diaper cream. Kids, teenagers, young adults or adults, OP should not let any of them anywhere near his wife or child because they clearly don't have remorse or recognize what they did as wrong. As if antepartum or postpartum isn't hard enough. Don't trust them, ever. 100% this. Who does that to a pregnant woman, even a woman who just gave birth? The toll pregnancy can take on your body is a lot. Quite frankly, I don't think he could ever trust them when they're around their children, especially if his sisters are basically adults. OP, I support strong family bonds, but in cases like this, it's probably best to distance them from your wife and child for your sanity and safety. I wouldn't want any of these people around a newborn. Lord knows what the catty sisters will do. We have 2 children, a daughter who's a pre-tween and a son who's a preschooler. My daughter loves her little brother and is quite protective of him, which I've always liked, at least until now. We recently had a family gathering at my parents' house. I don't get along with my sisters. They've raised their children in a way that they believe they can annoy others and get away with it because they won't get punished. That's why, especially my young nephew, who likes to bother my son. Whenever he does it, we immediately leave the meetings. We attended this last meeting because my father was already retiring from his job and wanted to celebrate the beginning of his retirement with a family reunion. My husband is the one who usually takes care of my son because when my husband is with him, my nephew doesn't dare approach him. But this time, my husband had a work meeting and couldn't go. My daughter, anyway, insisted that she would take care of her brother, so we ended up going. Now, my parents have 2 medium-sized swimming pools, one for children and one for adults. It turns out that my nephew threw my son into the adult pool. As soon as I realized I'd taken him out and cleaned him, my son was crying and I was watching red, but at least my son was fine. When I was about to go to complain to my sister, we heard a scream. We all turned to look, and it was my daughter sinking my nephew's face in the water of the children's pool and putting all her weight on top of him so that he couldn't get up. Almost all of us had to intervene to be able to separate them. I couldn't believe that a young girl could have so much strength, but not even my two sisters and I could make her let go of my nephew. When we managed to separate them, my nephew began to vomit water, throw it out of his nose and cry. My daughter also cried while hugging her brother, and I hugged both of them when everything calmed down between them. The screams began between my sister and me. My sister wanted to hit my daughter and I got in the way. Luckily, nothing happened. In the end, we separated and each of us returned home. It's worth clarifying that I didn't punish my daughter for what she did, and I do not plan to do so. She was only defending her brother. But the problem is that my sisters both want my daughter to apologize to my nephew and that I should punish her in front of them to let them know that that kind of violence is not okay, which I refused to do. My parents also think that my daughter went a little too far. The only person who's on my side now is my husband, saying that he would have done the same if he'd been in my daughter's place. So am I the idiot for refusing to punish her and not wanting her to apologize? What the heck are these dynamics? Your husband has to defend a preschooler from a young grammar schooler. You decided to rely on your little daughter to defend your son. Where the heck are you? Knowing your nephew picks on your son, you let him out of your sight long enough to allow the nephew to push him into a pool. Then your daughter holds him under the water and it takes multiple people to save him. And now you all are arguing about apologies instead of dealing with the fact that your kids tried to seriously harm each other. What is wrong with you people? Everyone's the idiot here. Not to mention having young children who don't get along unsupervised around pools. This was a huge failure in parenting. Parents are responsible for the safety of their children. The kids shouldn't be playing in either pool without a responsible adult doing guard duty. If no one drowned this time, there's always next time. OP, let your sister punish her brat first and let him apologize, and then you will do the same in return. It'll never happen, and this is all you need to know. Regardless, you need to teach your daughter that retaliation like that is very dangerous, even if her heart is in the right place, so to speak. For God's sake, tell your parents to kindly screw off. This interaction could have ended with your son or nephew's deaths. Tell your parents that you will no longer be attending any events with your nephew for the safety of all three children. They're welcome to meet with your children independently of your nephew. If not, their loss, but you're done putting their happiness before the safety of the children. I'm so baffled by everything going on in this story. I've been talking to Denise for a couple of weeks and our schedules finally aligned last weekend. I said we should get food and see where it goes. She didn't want me to pick her up, so we arranged to meet. I got there early and had a beer while I waited. When she showed up, she had a friend with her. I thought maybe that was her ride or she wanted someone to meet me in case things got sketchy. Nope, the girl sat with us at the restaurant. She ordered drinks and a meal. She was cool and I enjoyed talking to her almost as much as with Denise. When the bill came, the waitress asked how we were paying. I asked for a couple of seconds. The waitress left and I asked Denise what was going on. She said that her friend was along to make sure I was a good guy and that I should be paying for her too. I said that I'd only asked her out, not the friend, and that I would not be paying for her. Denise said that I should be trying to impress her and I was failing. I saw what was going on and decided to bounce. I said I would pay for supper if a threesome was on the table. Denise and her friend got offended and said that I was a pig. When the waitress came back, I paid for my meal and drinks. I also made sure to give her a cash tip and explained that it was a tip and not to be applied to the rest of the bill. Then I got up and left. Denise texted me and called me dozens of times to insult me and call me cheap. I may have been vulgar, but I don't think I was in the wrong. Not the idiot. I'm not one for hookups since I'm old and ugly, but if I was getting together, it seems to be when you hook up. It wasn't unreasonable if she brought another girl along for you to pay for, but you weren't doing it as a real suggestion. You were doing it to mess with them. Dude, imagine if they'd said yes and you had to back out. A story for the centuries. People should expect to go Dutch on the first date anyway. You don't know if you'll like the person and you can end the interaction without feeling you owe anyone anything. Bringing another person on the date and expecting you to pay for both of them is wild. If she really was that afraid for her safety, you could have met at a park or for ice cream in the daytime. There are a lot of ways you could handle the situation where your date brings a surprise friend and the only really wrong one is paying the bill. I think that if the woman I'm dating respected me, she wouldn't pull that crap with me in the first place, and I don't want to sit and eat with two women who think I'm a joke. As soon as I figured out that it would be a table for 3, I would have made my exit. I'm not interested in being treated like a fool, even if I get the last laugh in the end. My mother-in-law is currently going through a health scare and is being tested for cancer. She won't have her results for a week or so. But since the mention of cancer, my mother-in-law has been clinging to my husband fiercely. She's been asking him to go over there every day for the past 3 weeks to hang out with her because she might not have much time left. She's been having him drive her to every doctor's appointment. She's even jumped the gun and quit her job to sit at home and work on her health, which is fine, but what's not fine is her already asking my husband if she can borrow money. Thankfully, he hasn't given her anything. I would know as I work our finances. Anyway, multiple times in the past 3 weeks, my husband has run late for special events, work, etc. because he's over-helping his mother. And as much as I hate to admit it, it's been the cause of 3 pretty significant fights recently. His argument is that he wants to spend time with his mother because life is short, and where she may have cancer, he's not doing so well mentally. And I get that, but he's severely impacting me by doing so. Like I missed an important ultrasound because Mommy Dearest needed him because she was having a panic attack. He did try rushing home and he got me to my appointment, but I was 15 minutes late and therefore they needed to reschedule. Well, yesterday around 10 a.m, I told my husband I felt like I was going into labour soon. My body felt different and there was a lot more pressure. But roughly 2 hours later, his mother calls and says that she's bleeding and needs to be rushed to the emergency room. Instead of calling an ambulance, she called my husband. She has Medicaid, so ambulance rides aren't something she has to pay for. He immediately rushed to her side. My water breaks at 1:36 p.m. I remain calm. I was already having a home birth. My midwife was on her way. I knew everything would be okay, but I did call my husband. No answer. I then texted my husband and I asked him where he was. No response. I text again and ask him how long he'll be. No response. I text a third and final time saying, I kind of need you home, but no response. I have the baby without him. I didn't tell him anything about me being in labour. I have our daughter at 3:13 p.m. I text my husband a picture of our daughter with no context. He's home within half an hour and is angry at me for not sending him a text specifically stating that my water had broken, and I found out that he'd been sitting in his truck in the parking lot waiting for his mother outside, so he had his phone and got my text, but he was stressing and figured it was yet another false alarm. I had 3 false alarms. He says I'm in the wrong. I'm choosing to ignore his anger as I have bigger things to worry about, my perfect daughter. But now that I've had her, I feel guilty. Edit, my husband told me his mom is fine. Not the idiot. He ignored your calls and texts. What more does he want? A damn bat signal? Your husband messed up. Good riddance. You were obviously very late in pregnancy. Tell him that if he says one more word about it, he can go ahead and move in with Mommy. The fact he isn't apologising and taking accountability for his bad choices would be my last straw. He had said too many words already. She needs to tell him this now. He is a trash partner and a trash parent. His mother is not dying, there are no results, and yet the husband acts like the mother could die any minute. He made it clear who his priority is. I loathe mama's boys. Also, I never heard of anyone quitting their job because they might have cancer. A lot of cancers nowadays are perfectly treatable too. This type of overreaction makes me think there have been problems of Mummy Dearest overstepping boundaries. OP better watch out. She doesn't come with packed suitcases because she has nowhere else to live. My boyfriend 24 and I, 24 female, have been together for just over 6 years now, since we were 18. We've made some big moves towards our future recently, such as putting a deposit down on a house and being promoted in our careers. We've been together for 6 years and practically act like a married couple, without the titles. We share finances and go on family holidays together, and both our families love one another. I've started to get sick of my boyfriend tiptoeing around the concepts of proposing and getting married. A bit of background to this. While I was away at university, we spoke about a proposal, and he said it would be when I finished university. This was 2 years ago, and since then, he's promised me for 2 years that he would propose. Now it's getting to the point where I'm telling him I don't care how it's done, I would just want to be engaged and be married in a year or so. He constantly says how much he wants to marry me and create a future where we are our own little family. But every time I ask him what's stopping him, he just says he doesn't know. The whole nervousness around proposing was not knowing how your spouse would react. But at this point, I'm begging for a proposal. Because of this, I've given him an ultimatum of he proposes by the end of the year or I want to break up. If he's not ready for marriage, you shouldn't buy a house together or be financially enmeshed. Owning a house together and sharing finances without the benefit of a legally binding contract, such as marriage, is not a good idea. Right? He's okay with owning a property together but not okay with marriage yet. This makes you wonder if the house they bought was her initiative as well. She is not being sensible. I'm not sure why OP didn't just propose to her boyfriend. If you want a question answered, you should be prepared to ask it. Because she already knows his answer is no. That's why. OP, has an ultimatum ever worked in these situations? Apparently, something is stopping him from proposing. A deeper conversation about why that is would be a better way to approach things. You're both very young and 6 years is a long time. I'd approach it differently. I would say you won't buy the house, you will separate your finances, and you'll start looking for your own place. Right now, what you want and what he wants are different. Make him think about what he wants. Don't stay with him and waste more time. As my grandma would say, he's getting the milk for free, why buy the cow?